Beardy and the Beast Media Club.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is a placeholder intro song.
Thank you for joining us for Beardy and the Beast Media Club, a full spoiler discussion into a piece of media. We'll not avoid those spoilers like the affection of someone we cannot admit we like. As always, if you enjoy what we do, please like and subscribe or join the discussion in the comments or at our Discord. My name is Drew, and our friend, he's so stupid, Devin.
I gotta be like that. I gotta make this personal, Drew.
Today we are discussing the 2006 Studio Chizu animated film Toki o Kakaru Shoujo, or The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. So Devin, did this leap forward, or did it jump the shark?
Yeah, that was terrible. I enjoyed it. There were some interesting concepts that they kind of played with that I think they could have played with a little bit more. But I'm not disappointed in how they did it, especially, it being a romance shoujo and not like a horror or something.
Yeah, I quite liked it.
Yeah.
Just like from the start, I was smiling through it.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely had a glow throughout it. And I agree, there's probably some things that they could have played with more. I'm sure we'll talk about it. The first thing that struck me was actually the music. It was mostly, when I noticed the music, it was mostly like this piano riff the entire time.
Yes.
And it was definitely like, it was skipping and playful, or it was moody and like foreboding. Like, it really helped to control the mood of a film that otherwise was not flat, but not emotionally expressive for the most part.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed just the piano throughout. It's almost the way I say, yes, it was almost like neutral in a way. Whereas a lot of other soundtracks are going, was like, no, this is how you should be feeling at this exact situation. And yeah, I kind of enjoyed just the piano variations and almost made it feel ambient as opposed to in your face.
Agreed. It kind of set you off right, because like, I think the thing that set the mood and the tone of the film was the piano itself. It's what created that baseline of like how you should be experiencing the piece, and then from there, they were able to manipulate you. No, not confuse you. I would say lead you. Lead you on the journey that they were taking you on.
Yeah. Overall, like it. To be honest with the music, the biggest thing that I remember was like, I kind of like the piano, and then it was just there. So I was very much like a Drew this time, going, it's like, oh yeah, no, it must have been a good soundtrack. I didn't even pay attention to it.
That is a thing that I have said many times.
Oh, the thing that jumped out at me right at the beginning, it's the same thing that we kind of talked about in Boy and the Beast as well. It's like you can tell they're just not as much of a developed studio. It was just that, like, especially at the beginning, like the beginning sequences, it's kind of like you knew they weren't off model drawings, but they were very simple drawings. But then there was kind of like a dreamly like sequence theory around that too, so it wasn't. It's not something that's stuck in my mind throughout the film. Just you can see that slight difference in animation quality. I don't think overall it took from it. Just something I noted.
Well, and I think there might be small projects and more roots, but this was probably the first major release from Studio Chizu altogether. At least according to their website. I didn't check out like IMDb or the wiki or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Where it was like one of their earlier ones when we were looking at it. released against like, you know, a Studio Ghibli film at the same time, and it was just interesting. It's just almost give me like a Don Bluth feel, like just like kind of looking at these release schedules. But it's not really a negative. It's something that, I mean, we've noted it. Even with Boy and the Beast, like you can see the progression of how they get to like Belle in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
So, because a lot of the fundamentals were still there. Like again, those just gorgeous backgrounds. In As I'm noting more and more, like in its own unique style, right? Like I know we talk about Ghibli and their backgrounds a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they have their own style that could stand up to Ghibli without being Ghibli.
Yeah,
which is
without
nice.
trying to mirror it or replicate it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one thing. So it's one thing that I complained a bit with in Bubble because it was unexpected. There was a few scenes where they had these gorgeous backgrounds that were just so expertly made, and then the most simple characters, like they put no effort.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the aesthetic of the film.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a common occurrence. It just happened like 2 or 3 times. It's like, did you put effort in this scene? Whereas I think the simpleness of the film, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, helped make it more expressive, simply in the fact that, it's the best way to say it, they did a good job at trying to express the youth of these characters.
Yes.
So the simpleness in their face, what you'll notice in a lot of Japanese animated films is the younger the kid is, the more simple their face is.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's actually from complexity. It goes as characters age, they go from the most simple of faces to like the most complex of faces.
Yeah. A good example of that was Sailor Moon Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
So the remake of it. Not sure if you've actually seen any of it, but they did that with Chibiusa. Like they made her face too much like Usagi's.
Mm.
So it just looked weird on, what's supposed to be like a 6-year-old girl.
Yeah,
just said that a little bit more, that bit more detail. So it's an interesting way to do it, but it works. You generally know the age of a character from stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And like we didn't need to see, we didn't need to see Makoto and the way that she would just like openly bawl like a kid to know that she was still quite young.
Yeah. And there's a few things with that. So one thing that came to my mind is just speaking of Usagi. There's that bit of the trope with these types of protagonists I've seen, where it's like it's the klutz who is always waking up late that kind of also does that age thing. So yeah, you don't need that crybaby. Though she definitely had her moments, but man, Chizu really has the, like, when those scenes happen, it's like they hit hard every time.
They do good. Well, this is one of the things that I think that I'm noticing with Chizu, and a stylistic difference in their storytelling as compared to Ghibli. So I think Chizu goes from fewer big moments, whereas Ghibli is more smaller moments. Like we're talking about grand moments, right? So how impactful they are in relevance to the story. So if we were to take Princess Mononoke, so if we have the like the glob creature chasing the princess on the back of the wolf through the forest, that was an impactful moment in the film. Almost as impactful as the male, I wouldn't call him a lead because he really wasn't. The male protagonist in the film talking to the old and withered boar.
Mhm.
Whereas in this film, it was a bunch of small moments and it was all preparing you for one larger, more impactful moment in comparison to the rest of the tone of the film.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's just a difference in pacing.
Yeah.
Ghibli is not afraid to hit the spectacle a bit more
Mhm.
and use that to help tell its story. And I don't say that in a way like a lot of modern media is, where it's like a key dangling spectacle. It's just like, no, we're going to make this big and more fantastical.
I wonder,
Is a way to say it.
now that you say that, I wonder if that's why Belle was so well received. It's like the perfect middle ground between Ghibli and Chizu.
That's actually where I was going to go with that too. Um, I think it had that right spectacle, but it didn't feel like the spectacle in the same way,
Mhm.
which is nice. It had its own character and kind of made sense. Like, you go into a digital world. I mean, heck, Wreck-It Ralph did the same type of thing when they're like, when they were on the internet. That makes sense. But it's interesting with that pacing and all those little moments, because I can tell you, I had like everything was like building up and like just putting these questions in my head, and just the sheer like about the 2/3 mark of the film, Kosuke and Yuri, was it?
Yeah.
Or or on that bike heading towards that train, and I just like sheer panic.
Mhm.
And then like just the way they stop it, I'm like, oh God, oh God. But it's all because of these little moments they did. Like, and there's like enough separation between that. So I
Well,
guess
to accentuate on that, they were able to punctuate that so well by Makoto reaction, by like instinctual reaction, using her last leap
Mhm.
for to deflect against uh, Chiaki asking her
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Like it's something that she should have saved, but just out of pure like instinct and reaction, she like skipped back
Yeah.
because she was so used to that freedom by then. The fact that when you saw that bike go by, you were like, "Oh,
Uh, and I kind of want to talk about this scene um, pretty specifically.
mhm,
Just with like the build-ups and such. So I'm gonna jump around a little bit, and it'll kind of ties this. So of course, beginning of the film, like the first time she finds that she can leap through time is when she gets thrown in front of the train.
mhm,
Um, and then they just did these little things throughout where it's one of the things that I said be nice if they could have touched on a bit more was consequences.
mhm,
Like every time we see her switching with someone, we're going, okay, someone else is getting hurt in her place,
mhm."
which her aunt also kind of calls out. Um, and so then I kind of didn't,
Yeah, doesn't it mean someone is suffering as a result?
yeah. And, and so that's in my mind. I'm like, so this is now about a third of the way through the film. I'm like, oh, who got hit by that train then?
Mm,
Right. And then you just kind of forget about it again. And then just him going, oh, yeah, I'm borrowing your bike. And just instantly snapped right back to the beginning of the film, like, oh, that's who gets hurt. And they just did these kind of wonderful scenes. So we're talking about that background,
mhm,
like the backgrounds. Uh, I absolutely loved the scene of her first trying to run and find um, Kosuke. Because like you have that background moving blurred but still detailed enough you can tell what's kind of going on at a constant speed, and then her trying to catch up to the background and her falling back
mhm.
and getting back in to get there, not realizing she was early because again the times seemed to match. And then we don't even need to see what's happening with the bike, just her reaction chasing after it and how beat up she got trying to do everything she can to save him. It just, I don't know. It was masterfully done, masterfully built up and foreshadowed throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it just hit me hard, and I'm like, oh, like there's no coming back from this. Which is kind of interesting that I guess there was a way back from it, but I sure didn't know that at the time.
Well,
And like
I wonder if they did structure this movie originally like they had the concept, and then they created the action and consequence comparisons throughout, small and big,
mm,
based on the theme and the actual concept, and then just structured it in a very well-mannered place.
mm,
Because it's nice that the two most impactful leaps for me were directly related to the that action and that consequence of technically her original set of first and final leaps.
mm. Yeah, it's kind of nice having it, just bookend being basically at the same place too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was interesting. So, I know when we were grabbing the film to watch, you asked about like, because there's multiple other girls who leapt through time.
Well, they were girls who conquered time.
So they are all actually based on the same novel.
Oh.
Apparently there's like 5 or 6 different versions of it. This is the only animated one. And this is also the only one that's not technically an adaptation. It's an indirect adaptation. So in a way, it's actually kind of a sequel. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how the themes are in that. Because I agree, it's like it felt very purposeful how they added these consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if it was necessarily in the in the original source material in the same way.
The deviation there when she was talking with Auntie Witch.
Hmm.
Did they actually give her
They call her anti-witch throughout, but if you give me a second, I can get you her name because she was actually the protagonist of the novel.
Oh, okay. That ties
Hey!
everything that I suspected together.
Yeah, because that was actually one of the big questions that I had. It's like, okay, has she gone through this? And it's funny, like I'm reading on the line, they're all like, "Oh, this is obviously her in the future." I'm like, but no, because we see the time travel doesn't work that way. So my immediate thought was she had the same thing happen to her.
Mm-hmm.
And where was her name? It doesn't really matter too much.
Yes, she just like when she sat down and she was calling it and describing it as if she was familiar with it.
Yeah.
As in the fact that there's consequences, the fact that like she purposely used leaping through time.
Mm-hmm.
I had a different suspicion.
Mm.
I had thought she had encountered somebody who had leaped through time and it was related to the painting.
Mm. Yeah, I suspect that's what it is. And this is very much suspect because again, don't know the source material.
Yeah.
I just happened to kind of look at a synopsis of one of the other adaptations.
Yeah.
And it specifically says that she encountered someone from the future as opposed to having it. So I am inclined to agree with you that she herself didn't, but was familiar with, and that's why she's unmarried, because she basically had the same type of issue that Makoto has with Chiaku or Chiaki, sorry.
It just made me wonder if the painting was actually painted in the future.
That is something I thought too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was burned, but it was actually carried back by a time traveler. Like it had
Yeah,
existed for like 150 years, but not in the past, and that's why they couldn't date it.
yeah. Which is kind of interesting because I know, like, a thought like that entered my head too.
Mm.
So, like, I kind of, I mean, obviously didn't rewatch, but I kind of did a mental check. Was like, is the character in the painting reminiscent of anyone we've seen? But of course, it's that stylized, a very much Japanese style, like wood
Like
paintings.
traditional, yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't place anything there. That kind of goes back to like some of those questions that would be nice to have answered, or that explored a little bit more, because we actually don't know if that's possible. Like the time travel is weirdness. Like it gets rid of the possibility of having like the grandfather paradoxes, because like when she leaps, it's like literally she disappears from where she was and appears back there in some sort of comically klutzy fashion.
Well,
Which is
I had a moment, hey, and it was because maybe it's because of the way that I view Ghibli films, like because they're all so super dark. Um, I was wondering if some of the consequences, where she was saying someone suffers as a result,
Mhm.
was actually the person that she was displacing.
Mm,
So
yeah.
she was the same person repeatedly going uh, back through time and displacing and pushing somebody out.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't quite go that way. Simply because like we did see like the few consequences with, I cannot remember his name, but that one poor guy who had the temporary issue, or I mean like
You mean the only one
Kasuke,
that didn't have a happy ending?
that we know of. The simple fact that she went back in time and changed her test score had the consequence of Kosuke not getting together with Yuri, and we don't find that out for like half the film.
That being said, I think he would have rejected anyways. He would have just had a different excuse.
Hard to say, um, because we unfortunately never see that
Makoto's influence, right?
without Makoto's influence. Yeah, um,
But he just
but
came up as a character who was like was studious and had a path and was telling everyone else to focus.
yeah,
Like they and it was only reinforced when they're saying like he was a volunteer and he did good work, so he's a driven person. So
yeah,
I'm thinking at that point, like the way that the character was established to me was such that he was someone who had a plan and was just sticking to it. So
yeah,
I don't think he would have entertained that advance. It's, I mean, it's neither here nor there because we can't prove it either way because there's nothing in the film that says he wouldn't,
yeah.
and there's nothing in the film that says he would.
Well, okay, so there is one part to me that makes it believable, that makes it easy for me to fit it into him saying yes,
Mm.
if it wasn't for the test scores, and it's the when they're having the conversation about like him dating someone else,
Mhm.
because that came up, and Makoto kind of laughs it off. It's like, oh, but then there's not the three of us or whatever. Um, or that was the response around it, and I'm kind of like, that doesn't feel right. But it didn't feel like when he was talking about turning her down, it his reasoning didn't feel right to me, and it didn't feel like it was because he was interested in someone else.
No, I
So,
think
so there's something that was just odd about it. That
I that might be a self-report.
mm,
So he knows that Chiaki likes Makoto, and obviously, like it had been indicated in plain words that Makoto had liked Chiaki at least at some point.
yeah,
Um, so it could be just him describing how he feels
mm,
about their situation and why he brings up Chiaki a couple times. It's kind of like he doesn't want to be the one that gets left alone.
So I see why you're saying it could be that like you're saying self-report from him or self-report in the way I'm perceiving it.
From him. So he's self-reporting how he feels about it, projecting upon Makoto, and that would actually reinforce the fact that he might say yes if he thinks or knows that Chiaki's going to ask out Makoto, because he doesn't want to get left out. It's just it's a reason why he might say yes to Yuri.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's just a
Anyways, back to the original conversation.
Sorry.
No, I'm the one who derailed us. So yeah, like seeing those little consequences, no matter how far-fetched or how direct, were nice to see in real time. I don't think I saw a thread that got left untied as far as the consequences.
Yeah. Which is nice because one of the things that I kind of suspected, and why I led into why I mentioned the whole horror thing right at the beginning, was even before the full discussion with the aunt about the consequences. I'm like, I just wonder if there's going to be like a butterfly effect type thing happening here. So I liked how they touched on it, while still staying mostly light until it very much wasn't. And like they even started building up the consequences. They were getting worse and worse and worse.
I didn't notice that until you just mentioned that.
Yeah. Like they were all minor, like none of them were butterfly effect type consequences. Except for the last one.
Someone falls into another person. Someone starts getting bullied. Someone actually gets injured. I see what you mean. That's actually well crafted. And I guess for like the actual push of the story, it makes the most sense, because if they kind of went up and down with the consequences, then she might have learned the lesson earlier and avoided a lot of things.
Yeah. Whereas could have just been coincidental.
Well, at the very end too, in the second last leap, the one from Chiaki.
Yeah.
Still don't know how it stops time, but I'll allow it. There was an immediate consequence to that last leap. I can't go home now. I'm gonna leave. You'll be without me. So like, we go from like these long-winded streaks of cause and effect to just like an immediate, like, we did this and now this is the direct consequence.
Yeah. And that was, they could have left it there. I mean, not to say I didn't appreciate I did like the kind of workaround to kind of get the quote unquote happy endings for it. Because essentially, because he reset time, it means that Makoto didn't use her last time skip, so she now had it to go and skip back.
It was clever.
It really was. Raises a slight question in my head, but
well, what's the question though?
It just makes, when she first gets the powers, who else was in that room with her? Who scared her in the first place?
It wasn't herself, and it wasn't Chiaki.
Yeah.
No, it was a dark-haired individual, which we may have seen in the photograph with Auntie Witch.
Okay. Yep. That very well could be it.
Yeah, it's plausible.
Yeah.
There was lots of little mysteries in it, and I do like how it kind of led us to actually thinking about it. Like, I was thinking about it after the film. I was like, is this ant, like, what's the meaning of the painting? How does it tie into the ant? Why does the ant know? What does the future actually look like? Because they live underground and there's no surface water.
Yeah.
Like, did the painting come from the future? Wait, did Makoto get all her leaps back?
Yeah, that one was. Yeah, that's a good one. That one didn't actually enter my head.
I don't think she would have, logically speaking, on how it works.
Yeah, because I think she went back technically to just before she got the leaps as well. And it was her leap that reset it. So she used her leap to go back.
The
Whereas
thing
she
is,
couldn't use her leap to reset the time. The only reason she got her leap back at the end was because Chiaki used his last leap. He was the one who reset it for her.
but
Not
the
the
thing
other way
is,
around.
she leaped back to before she got the powers. She originally got the powers by falling and hitting her elbow on the walnut, but she appeared before landing on that walnut. Does the walnut have the power?
Ooh. Yeah, no, that's
Logically, like for the movie to make sense in my head, no. I think the power is tied to an entity. It's a finite thing. It gets transferred to, like, say a soul is forever or exists out of time. It powers the soul, and then the body interacts with the soul. So it's already depowered. But
yeah,
like it's a nice little question that I had.
yeah. I kind of want to lean into the rules as presented in the film was because she was using her own to do it, going back to before you get the powers to get the powers again. Just
That's
where the paradox gets created.
It's the whole genie thing, like wishing for more wishes.
Yeah, and it was just coincidental.
Mm-hmm. One thing I liked, what you mentioned though, and it was a nice little subversion by the film, was she sees Kosuke and Yuri flying through the air with the train coming. They're about to die, and then time just stops.
Yeah.
And then it starts this conversation, and Chiaki walks up with the bike, and he explains that he went and got the bike. What they didn't show you, Kosuke and Yuri flying through the air anymore, and Chiaki actually directly says, well, you don't remember they died, because I changed it with my last leap.
Yeah.
But we got to find out in real time that she didn't know what had happened just happened because of the time leaping. I just thought that was actually probably the most impactful moment for me.
That was, again, that whole scene was just, chef's kiss.
Well, I mean, she was a little too beat up for just bailing on the street.
Yeah, I just figured she was taking her, all of the falls and tumbles as she's trying to get past people. And a bit too beat up, but it made it stand out very clearly that something happened, because all of a sudden she was pristine again. When the time stopped,
right.
it was all healed. So I think they needed to make it I think they made it that bit more dramatic for a couple of reasons. One, it's that build up to that bit of a spectacle. It can show us what happened to Kosuke and Yuri without showing us what happened to them, right? Kind of use her as a proxy. And it just becomes so clear when Chiaki does it. And it's an interesting little bit of a build up around there, because of course she used the last time leap to go when Chiaki says, "Are you leaping through time?"
Yep.
Which just immediately is like, how many people know about this? It didn't even dawn on me that that's what it was, even though like the breadcrumbs were actually laid out throughout the film.
Yeah, well, as soon as he said that to me, I was like, oh, yeah, it was him. Because I was already looking for the person.
Yeah.
I was like, the walnut had to come from somewhere. Yeah. Someone in the school. And I was like, I had for some reason already discounted Kosuke.
Yeah. Yeah, like I knew it came from somewhere, but like that's definitely what solidified it. But it was just kind of like because the only other thing we have is like, oh yeah, all girls can do that, which is what like Auntie Witch said.
Mhm.
So it didn't dawn on me that it would be Chiaki.
Mm. I mean,
Even Annie was
I
sure.
keep saying Yuri. It's Yuki.
Hmm? Which one's Yuri then?
I keep I think we're thinking of Miyoki Kono.
Maybe
Okay, Yuki Sakito is the.
there's a Yuri and a Yuki. Yeah,
Oh
because
no, I've
no,
totally
no,
been.
no, no. Miyuki is the little sister.
Oh, wait, is it
Look at the
Yuri?
last name. Kono is the last names. Makoto Kono and Miyuki
Oh, there
Kono.
is a Yuri.
Yes.
Oh, I'm just dumb. Good thing there's post.
You're not going to edit that out.
I probably maybe will.
um, what? Where was I
This
going with that?
this will be an abrasive jump because the previous things I said were edited out. But you know, a great scene was when Makoto was about to jump out of the window and her sister grabs her.
Oh my god, that was the most adorable thing.
No, don't do it.
No, don't do it.
Because
It's
I ate your
okay.
pudding.
Oh.
What I really liked about that scene is like it was funny and it was weird and it was adorable and they were like she's leaving in a huff and they both stop and it like
Yeah.
waits 5-7 seconds and then they both just wave.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's family.
Yeah. I really liked that. That was another thing that kind of just put me on a slight false trail with the with how the time jumpings were working at first.
Mm.
Because I'm like, oh, did she go back and eat her own pudding? Because like one of her first test jumps was her going back and eating her pudding.
Oh yeah. Wait, was it like her first 3 jumps?
Yeah. Yeah, that's another. Oh, that could be no, because he said he couldn't get home. So that was another weird thing about it too, because it's like at first she was jumping back, but it's like it didn't stick.
Mm.
It was more like she rubber banded a little bit. Rubber banded a little bit.
You do got to keep in mind the unknown factor.
Mhm.
Was Chiaki using his abilities?
I don't know if that would affect.
Well, it would affect how many jumps she has.
I think this is a relativity issue.
Well, I mean,
Like, for all intents and purposes, even if he goes back, so if she used 3 jumps and he goes back, and we're in the timeline that he went back, it's just she's going to use those same 3 jumps for the same 3 things because she doesn't have the additional information that she had when she went back to give Chiaki his final jump back. Like the only reason that the end plays out that way is because of those little knowing that bit of consequences around it.
it's true.
Right? Just in the same way as like she had no idea that that Kosuke and Yuri died. So from the perspective of the film, wouldn't matter if he was using his jumps.
I'll agree. It's just like it all just evolve into semantics and stuff, so it's not really argument. You've made a compelling argument that I will agree with you.
What I was going to say, and this is why it kind of popped in my head about that rubber banding, was like before she went back, almost like, okay, did he rubber band back to where he was from? But then it doesn't seem to be how it works. So it's just kind of that little, there's a little bit of a loose connection there.
Mm-hmm.
Not to a point that it like strongly takes away, just raises a question. Because he very clearly needed to have that last jump. So I guess that's actually just kind of talking about the jumps and like her jumping back to go. Are you time leaping?
She leaped back and he only had one to the beginning. Got the
Yeah.
walnut off the floor and he only had one jump remaining then.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Yep.
I just proved myself.
Yeah. Okay, so that was actually one of the nice consequences that I really liked throughout. Just going back to Chiaki using her jumps for these little tiny things.
Mm-hmm.
Her continually jumping back to prevent Chiaki from asking her out.
Yeah.
I loved the consequences around that. And again, just some of these visual things that they were doing with that. Because now, of course, she's got this knowledge. And it clearly affects their relationship
Mm-hmm.
in the exact way that she was afraid that one of them dating someone would affect their relationship.
Well, exactly.
And there were just some other interesting visual things. Like when this was happening, it's like the crowds are around her, like just the background characters would all kind of leave the frame around her, which just pushed that isolation. It was a really interesting touch.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder what made Chiaki ask her if she was time leaping. Like, what point was it finally like, oh, this is a thing I've seen? I guess it's kind of hard to tell how far apart everything was happening too. This could have all been like 2 days.
I think there was a couple scenes where she had weird information at weird times.
Hmm.
It might be related to that.
Yeah.
It also could be her sudden change in demeanor and ability.
Hmm.
Going for someone who sucks at baseball to hitting homers, someone who is not as good at stuff as they claim to be, suddenly succeeding.
Yeah, it was just an interesting, like, I mean, and the real reason I asked is like, I could see lots of things for this. Like, if he knows that the leaping actually involves these leaps, like, I'd be questioning her somersaulting around in the most klutzy way possible to do anything. Be my instance, like, okay, we got to talk. So it's kind of like,
and if you notice that, does that mean that he was intentionally singing the same song badly over and over and over again, just to like annoy her or something?
Yeah. Though again, evidence in the future kind of shows against that, just because, again, she doesn't remember what happens with Kosuke, and Chiaki doesn't remember anything that happened before she went back to give him his final leap back.
Mm-hmm.
So there's clearly it resets everything. It's kind of like, that makes you go, okay, what's the sign that would have that question ever come up?
I think it's just subtle stuff. I think it's the like ability change, and her avoiding him as soon as he becomes resolute enough to ask her out.
Yeah,
it's like as if she knew he was gonna try to ask her out, and then all of a sudden was completely avoiding him for no reason that he's done anything.
Yeah. Though. Okay, so that raises something else with Chiaki. So he kind of acts like there was a time limit on how long he could be in the past for. Really, like that's kind of the indication he gives at the end, and why he goes back to the future. So, if that's the case, one, why can't he stick around for the few days? Because we know he's still there to see the painting. Like when Auntie Witch first puts the painting out, he's still there before they go back in time to save Kosuke. So why couldn't he stay those extra days And if you have a time limit to go back, why are you confessing to her if you're you're going to be leaving in like a day or two?
I think the confessing thing was a dick move.
Yeah. All right.
There's two scenarios, and the first one makes the most sense to me. The first scenario is there's no actual hard time limit from like science or physics or the rules of time travel.
Mhm.
It was more a case of not staying back in time for too long to influence things.
Hmm.
But before he knew it, he had these connections and the summer had
Influence
passed.
things. Okay.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
like it's probably like a cultural thing opposed to like a science thing.
Hmm.
The other one could be like a displacement in time thing. By going back to a time period that you do not yet exist in,
Hmm.
you might become like lost in the time stream or something.
Yeah.
I did. There was nothing to indicate that within the context of the film. We know it won't sling him back to the future.
Yeah.
Because then there would have been no need for his last jump.
Yeah.
So if there is a downfall based on the rules of this universe, the only thing that I could think of is illness, being lost in the time stream, or just death.
Hmm.
None of which were telegraphed in the film. So it's
Yeah.
got to be more of like a cultural thing, or like don't stay there for too long. I guess that still does come into some type of science. Like if you stay there too long, you'll start influencing things on a macro level.
Yeah.
So it's like a rule opposed to a limitation.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that fits a lot better, and I think that also makes sense why he leaves even that bit earlier after Makoto talks with him with the final jump.
Mm,
Because like, okay, well, we're ready to move on.
yeah.
Um,
Well, he had said his goodbye.
Yeah.
To say your, I know this from experience, to say your goodbyes and then not have the actual parting until even the next day is very difficult.
Yeah.
So,
but I have to disagree there because he hadn't said his goodbye. She reset him saying his goodbye.
In the end, but when he froze time and they were doing their little goofy back and forth, that was him saying goodbye and he has to leave. So if he had stayed longer,
yeah.
but then he got reset after, therefore making that goodbye move, and he doesn't even know that he saved Kosuke's life.
Yeah. I got the impression that Makoto told him. I got the impression that she recapped, and I think that's why they could say goodbye again.
I mean, you can throw it on there.
Yeah.
I don't think she did.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'd like to think that happened, and I'm gonna go with that because there's nothing to tell me otherwise.
The time. So this future world,
Mhm.
all of a sudden, like the time leaping makes a bit more sense for Chiaki's character because he's great at math, but he doesn't know kanji.
That explains so much.
Yeah, it's just like, well, we can see it now with nowadays Japan. Like they're on such a population decline. Like the only thing that they can do is import people.
Yeah.
Which means you import other cultures, and they've been they've been Americanized, but they're still strongly like a Japanese cultural influence there.
Yeah.
But we can see the transition to why learn kanji when you can learn the what's the other one?
Romanji?
Yeah, Romanji. And then from there, if it's in this future state of the world where it's apocalyptic, like we don't know, is it war torn? Are they speaking English? Are they speaking Chinese? Are they speaking Russian?
Mm.
Are they speaking like Indian?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there was a actually a nice little bit of, I guess, foreshadowing,
Mhm.
because it seems odd that's like being illiterate, essentially illiterate, but being good at math and numbers. There's some other. Uh, I wasn't sure if it was stylistic at first, but I think it was clearly foreshadowing afterwards. The like the first leap, I'm like, that's very sci-fi-y.
Mhm.
Because I had no idea if this was going to be sci-fi, if it was fantasy that gave the time powers. Honestly, at first I was happy taking anti-witches idea of, yeah, no,
Girls can
just
do this.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have been stoked for that to be like
Yeah.
a universal constant in that world.
Yeah. And even if not universal constants, again, my immediate mind, and this is very much my cultural influence hitting me, is again, butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Again, came to mind as like, oh yeah, it was a genetic thing. His father had it as well. And right. So so that was my thoughts. Like, okay, it's the ant, so obviously. But then by doing that little bit of sci-fi, again, helped sell Chiaki being from the future to me.
Mm.
And just like the way the numbers were stylized, again, gave just that sci-fi feel as soon as you saw it.
Yeah, it
Same
still
immediately.
remained very alarm clock to kind of give that dream etherealness, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
there was a digital look to it.
Which kind of brings to, given the state of the future world, it makes the fact that he's so intrigued and enjoys baseball that much more prevalent. There's no other popular sport that could be truly played in a way underground that baseball cannot be. Because there's something about flight and the sky when it comes to baseball, right?
Yeah, you never hear of an indoor baseball game.
Yeah. And it might be possible if you're doing like kids t-ball or something.
Yeah. A batting cage, maybe.
Yeah. But even then, like his fascination with the sky, like him being so intrigued with baseball, that just makes so much sense for the character. I mean, you pretty much have to be from a barren apocalyptic world underground with no surface water to actually enjoy baseball.
I was going the same way, beat me to it. Or rather, I didn't want to interrupt you while you were getting to that point.
There is a strategy to it when you start thinking of it more like chess. Like what player is going on and what they're doing that way and what they're, but it is
it's better than cricket.
dude, cricket's awesome.
Cricket, they just run back and forth in a straight line. At least in baseball, you run in a diamond.
I like your meme reasoning. No, cricket. I like cricket more than I like baseball. Because I also spent a year in Australia, like watching people play afternoon cricket.
And bringing French fries to a barbecue.
Nothing wrong with bringing French fries to a barbecue.
They made a song about it.
There's nothing wrong with bringing French fries to a barbecue. God damn it. You go down to the chippy, you pick up the chip, you bring it to the barbecue. What am I going to eat? Crisps? I want chips with my burger. Anyways.
Things that'll make no sense to anyone, but still funny as hell. Put that in your box, friends. I derailed myself.
Yeah, I honestly, I think like if this film had 10 leaves, it could probably go back 8 times without encountering negative consequences.
Yeah, I agree. It was solid. I mean, even though like obviously we're poking at things. I mean, that's just us being critical. It honestly
Well, I mean,
did not take away from it.
any time travel movie.
Yeah, it's the issues that's going to happen with any time travel movie, and I don't know. For the most part, they handled it pretty well. Like, there's just again these couple little points. I'm like not quite sure what are the rules.
Oh no,
but
I
nothing,
just had a super dark thought.
okay.
Oh, okay.
What was it? She was dead the entire time.
No.
Okay, because that totally entered my mind at some point in the film.
Well, the amount of time she probably got concussed is definitely worrisome. So every time Chiaki went back, or not Chiaki, every time Makoto went back, she displaced her former self. But did she displace her former self? Or was it actually her mind? Her mind traveling back. It'd make an excuse as to why there's not two of her when she jumps backwards, right? Okay, now follow me here.
Okay.
Chiaki doesn't exist in this timeline.
Okay.
He's from the future.
Yep.
And he's time-lit back. So what poor fool is he inhabiting as a time leaping, mind controlling ghost spirit?
So I love your thought process, and I think it would make a really interesting film, but is 100% not presented that way in this one.
I'm just saying.
Again, it's one of those things I said. Like there's some choices that I think they could have made to explore the story in different ways. That is one of them. Again, the butterfly effect idea is one of them. Both of their time jumps being gone, like have them regardless of the resetting of the past. Like there's lots of things they could have done to explore that. In the film as presented, it was pointed out often enough that, but you were right here a second ago. Which is telling me like she was physically displaced and like people's memories were being fuzzy around it. Because it wasn't just a one-off thing that was said.
Well, the reason why I like this film a lot is not because of how great it is. It's because it took these choices, it worked with them, and they suited the film.
Yes.
Nothing that they did regarding the jumping through time or the displacement or even the whole Chiaki and the like convenient getting leaps back for the sake of resolution impacted the film in a negative light. It was all additive.
Yeah.
And alongside that, you had a consistent mood. Consistent feeling, and it was a journey that you were on with the characters. So there was no conversations, there was no weird character moments that were out of character.
Yeah.
So everything was synergetic from the start to the finish, like to completion in the film.
Yeah. It's one of the big things I think with any type of time travel, because I agree with you completely there. Again, a lot of these speculations are just, these are other cool things you can do with time travel within the same kind of constraints that they gave.
Yeah.
But a big thing is when it comes to time travel, you need to know your constraints and you really need to know your consequences. Because any misplace just sends everything spiraling so easily. So they knew what they wanted. They knew how they wanted it to affect the world. Stuck with it very well. And again, like just that little bit of time travel, like the only reason that I'm not like wasn't tossing my notebook at the jumps resetting
Mhm.
was very specifically because you don't even remember it happening.
Yeah, that one,
Line.
and that's the power of a single line.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that line, I don't think I would have liked this movie near as much.
Yeah. It explained the rules without having to like beat someone over the head with what the rules are and then forgetting the scene later.
Well, it allowed the viewer to have a sense of discovery too.
Yeah. So and then this big thing is like they stuck with it. They didn't try to go crazy with it. They didn't do anything odd. Like, and the only other time travel movie that I've thought has done things so consistently, again, is one that I've already mentioned a couple times, is the Butterfly Effect.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the alternate ending. It knew exactly how much it could mess with time. And this one here did it and didn't need to go dark in the same way to explore the same types of thoughts.
For sure. Well, I guess with that and the fact that your freaking camera is freaking
I know, right?
Okay, so it's happening on your side?
Yes.
And it's your camera?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because if I was getting that kind of artifact while watching a video through Discord, it would have been my GPU otherwise.
No, it's my camera.
All right.
I could see it I could start seeing it flash on your face. I'm like, okay, this is clearly transmitting.